All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm Annie. I work for Yellow Arrow Publishing. We're a small nonprofit press serving writers in Baltimore and beyond. We are centered around a common mission of supporting, uplifting, and empowering writers who identify as women. And the theme that Matilda developed for Kindling around community care and advocacy could not be a better representation of our values as an organization. So tonight we're celebrating this latest issue of Yellow Arrow Journal. In addition to the journal, we publish our online series Vignette and a series of chapbooks each year. So I just wanted to make a note that we're open and reading for chapbook submissions for 2024 publication right now. If anyone has a collection they're working on or knows someone who is working on a collection, we would love to see it. Matilda is a poet with an MFA in poetry from the University of Maryland. She was a 2020 writer in residence with Yellow Arrow, and some of the work from her time in that residency was published in our zine titled I Want to Love You, Baltimore. Our writing residency program also, as a note, just opened for applications today, if you want to check out our website for that. But Matilda served as our guest editor for this issue of Yellow Arrow Journal, and we were so thrilled to work with her to produce this stunning collection. I'm so excited to celebrate all of our contributors tonight. So I will turn it over to Matilda.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. It is wonderful to be here and to be in community with you all. First and foremost, I want to thank Annie and Yellow Arrow for all the amazing work you do in building community and supporting writers who identify as women and just really bringing people together. I also want to thank each and every one of our fabulous writers who are here with us tonight and are going to be sharing their work. It was truly a joy to read, and so you are all in for a great night. And I also want to thank any Yellow Arrow volunteers who are here and any other members of the audience who have found our way to this wonderful Zoom. And before I turn it over to our first reader, I want to say Happy Pride. I wore my Hawaiian shirt because I don't believe in Pride merch anymore. So anyways, this is my Hawaiian shirt for Pride. Okay, so I'm going to kick it off to our first reader, Al Kelly. So Al Kelly grew up in LA with her mama. She lived her life in the sunshine, writing poetry, singing, and acting. She has lived in a lot of cool places, LA, New York, Budapest, Chicago, and she's seen bits and pieces of the world that she thinks are dope. Throughout her life, she's continued to write poetry because it's the most magical way of communicating. She hopes to one day publish a collection of poetry and run away to a country cottage perfectly situated on a Parisian city street where she'll write, laugh, rest, explore, make love, and dance forever. That's an amazing bio. Over to you, Al.
Oh my God, I don't even remember writing some of that. Wow, thank you. Okay, I'm Al, and I'm gonna share a poem today called Inheritance. I've never read it to anyone out loud before, so this is the first time. Thank you all for being here with me in this vulnerability. Okay, here we go. Inheritance. I am the answer to my ancestors' whispered prayers. Baby, my rest is divine, and my breath, my breath, my breath is revolution atomized. Thank you. That's the whole thing, y'all. It's very short. Back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Al. Oh, God, I love it. For those who don't know, this is the poem that sort of kicks off the journal, and it's really just such a beautiful opening, and it was such a pleasure to read it. So, and Al, you read it beautifully, so thank you. All right, so our next reader is Sarah Piper, and y'all, I'm reading everyone's bios, so you all have some great bios. It's wonderful. That's a wonderful part of the reading. Sarah Piper is a writer, physician, patient, and advocate, a Midwesterner by roots and accent, and a Californian by address and adventurousness. After years of caring for seriously ill patients as a palliative medicine physician, her own illness invited a new course, and words have become a second life. She now writes about relationships, the medicine of tiny truths, the experience of being undone by circumstance, and the myriad ways we can be voicefully, marvelously remade. When not writing, you'll find Sarah celebrating small wins, trying to make noise on a guitar, and dreaming of her next big hike. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. This poem is called Calling. Put down the phone. You don't need it now. This winter of barren white cold, of snowblind eyes and masked moons, of ice sheet roads in every direction. This time of waiting out the storm is receding with a trickle of snow melt through the rocks underfoot. A tinkling like delicate and dazzled voices whispering now and go. Put down the phone. The winter birds are waking early, cutting silence with song, melody born in black, this long night yielding to the stage of morning. They sing of all mornings everywhere, and no one else can hear your morning, can know the lessons of your night. Put down the phone. Today, the first day of possible, the first of daring, dogged days. There is no one to call to ask where to put your next foot in the snow, which blank canvas to head toward, to settle at and on your knees to begin painting a different landscape for a different sky. For the task of turning time, a new vision for a harsh season, a revolt and a remembering. There is no need to wait for the globe to spin by degrees. The season of vivid, hot light is within you. There is no one to call for permission to unzip your jacket and let it burn new lines on the world. Thank you. This poem was a prompt from a writing group that I'm a part of over a year ago. And it really kind of came from a space of wanting to acknowledge the potency of vulnerability and being in those vulnerable moments of life, and how those, when we turn toward them, we find so much wisdom to come and so much guidance for what is true for us and for the changes we want to create in the world. And so I just really wanted to try and capture some of that moment of transition that I was also feeling very much myself at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was such a beautiful reading. Another round of snaps. And I just also wanted, I love this idea in the poem that connection is, we sometimes look to one way to connect with each other, but the answer is connection is all around us, and really is in the abundance of the life that we sometimes forget. So thank you for that, Sarah. That was wonderfully read. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Mandy Shunnarah. Mandy Shunnarah is an Alabama-born Palestinian-American writer who now calls Columbus, Ohio home. See bus. Mandy's essays, poetry, and short stories have been published in the New York Times, Electric Literature, The Rumpus, Entropy Magazine, The Normal School, Heavy Feather Review, and others. Mandy's first book, Midwest Shreds, Skaters and Skate Parks in Middle America, is forthcoming from Belt Publishing. Over to you, Mandy.
It would help if I unmuted. Yeah, thank you so much. So the title of my poem is A Train Derails in Ohio and They Still Won't Say the Name of My Country. And briefly, what inspired this is a couple of months ago, a train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, and spilled all these chemicals that they then had to burn to get them to go away, but they didn't really go away, they just went into the air. And the whole time I'm watching the news, everyone seems to be balking at saying Palestine. They're calling it East Palestine, Ohio, and modifying the name. And as a Palestinian person, that unnerved me that they were seemed to be nervous about saying Palestine. And then I was thinking about how when unexpected disasters happen, like the train derailment, they're all over the news, but when expected disasters happening, like the ongoing dispossession of my people, they don't make the news. And so that's what I was thinking about when I wrote this. So, a train derails in Ohio and they still won't say the name of my country. The way the news anchors talk, it could have happened anywhere. Main Street of small Townsville, north of South and east of West. Let your imagination do the navigating. The linguistic gymnastics, the dance of verbiage, the passive voice they call objectivity. They say Eastern Ohio, rural Ohio, on the Pennsylvania border, voices balking at the town's name. Even though it's not East Palestine as in the West Bank, but East Palestine as in a white man in Ohio who read the newspaper and knew geography from other white men, just thought it was a neat name. On derailment day, Metal beams and railroad ties split the town with fire, leaving chemical miasma in their wake. Broken axle, a penny on the rails, same difference. Bitter particles lodge in throats. Chickens quake and keel during the controlled burn, but the army says there's nothing toxic about spilled vinyl chloride and butyl acrylate, but it's already flavoring the water, already salting the air. Just one of many moonlit rides through East Palestine, but you only hear about destruction when it becomes disaster. The cameras only turn on when our suffering is entertaining. Our rescuers tell us nothing's wrong as we watch our nameless world ablaze. At least one Palestine has deliverers and redeemers. At least one Palestine hasn't been forsaken. When one burns, it's not just the will of a cruel God. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. That was so powerful. I think the line, no one pays attention when our disaster isn't entertaining. You know, this idea of what we look to and what we look away from is incredibly important to speak to, and I think really rendered really powerful in that. So thank you so much for sharing. Next, I'm going to turn to Kathleen McTigue. So Kathleen McTigue was born and raised in Spokane, Washington, and lives in Boston, Massachusetts. She's an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister and worked in parish ministry for 25 years until 2012, when she began a new denominational social justice program. Now retired, Kathleen studies and writes poetry, accompanies Spanish-speaking migrants as they seek asylum, and takes long hikes with her energetic dog. She and her husband, Nick, are the parents of 3 adult children. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Can you hear me okay? Got it. Okay. This poem is called Waking Up at the DMV. That was the week when the final fade of your mother's mind made you dumb with grief. Dark shades draped between you and your life. Then when the car got towed for expired tags, you were stuck for hours at the DMV, damned to the slow shuffle line with all the other sinners. You started to hate the thick neck of the stranger ahead of you. Tattooed arms, shaved head, sweat-marked shirt, metal sticking from cheeks and ears. Then he turned, caught your stare, gave you one hard look. Like waking in sunlight, his face went soft and vivid. He said, "Mama, we gonna get through." Touched your cheek when you started to cry. And you could feel then again the world, its deep heart still there beating, with the door held open by his clumsy, gentle hands. And that's a story, of course, story poem, but the reason it felt to me like it fit with Kindling, and I didn't know if it would resonate for other people or if it was just in my head, but it feels to me like what has repeatedly kindled my capacity to keep on doing the social justice work, which I now do with migrants, but have been involved with in a lot of different ways, has been often the surprise connections that break through these imaginary barriers that we create, usually right here, like we're just making up this story in our heads. And then something happens that breaks through that and something entirely new can emerge. So that's what I was after with trying to tell that story. Kindling.
Thank you, Kathleen. What a wonderful story and beautifully told. I think it, as you said really powerfully, it is the connections, you know, there are so many wonderful people out there, and I think we frequently don't see each other. But the answer is that we are, you know, we have so much in common, and the way that you allow yourself to see and to be seen in that poem is really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we have Susan Mack. Susan Mack, she, her, is a longtime Austin writer and storyteller who has fairly recently turned from corporate to personal writing. Recently, her work has been published in Hippocampus, the Rubber Top Review, Crime Magazine, and Austin's Rio Review. Her essay, Ostrich Truths, took second place in the Q2 2020 Women on Writing CNF competition. Susan holds an MFA in creative nonfiction from the Vermont College of Fine Arts. Over to you, Susan.
Okay, this is a longer essay, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the introduction and then skip to the end. So it's 9 p.m. The shower's running. The bathroom lights are off. I know the feet sloshing in the porcelain tub belong to my 16-year-old who cannot stand to look at their own naked body. There was a time that I turned the light on when my oldest showered in the dark. That was before the day 3 years ago when they dressed up for Christmas Eve in jeans and a bow tie. I didn't know they'd secretly replaced their sports bras with a chest binder. All I knew was that I wanted them to match my picture of dressed up for Christmas. Frustrated, I asked why they'd chosen those clothes. Their face crumpled, eyes fell to the floor, cheeks flushed red. I think I have gender dysphoria, they sobbed, before throwing themselves onto their bed, burying their face in the pink and yellow quilted pillow shams they'd chosen when they were 3. No, this can't be true, was my first thought, as I eyed a closet full of abandoned dresses that were only recently a daily uniform. But in that moment, standing in front of my oldest in a bedroom too full of my kids' emotions, there was no space for denial or frustration. I followed my child to their bed, ran my head against their sob heaving back. I sat and listened as they talked about their dysphoria. I wish I could remember the words we spoke. I know they included non-binary, discomfort, not a girl. I didn't know what to think about it all. I just knew I wanted to quiet my child's screaming needs for a mom, for affirmation, for acceptance. After half an hour of snuggles, their tears abated enough that we still went to church. We walked in, dressed as we were, holding hands as we sang Silent Night. And then I'm going to skip just to the last paragraph. My husband and I talk continuously about leaving Texas, but we have aging parents who need our care. I can count the months until my kids will finish high school. Leaving would disrupt a lot of lives. Besides, we don't know where else we'd like to go. It would have to be somewhere that my kid, any kid, could still feel welcome to wear what they want and be who they are, even at Christmas Eve church services. As I stare at their bathroom door, I don't reach in to turn the light on. I let my kids stay distracted for the moment so they don't have to look at their body, their state, their government.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a really powerful piece, and I think the love and the support and the understanding and the journey that you share is something that is truly life-saving. So thank you so much for that. And so our last reader of tonight is Yuemin He. Yuemin He is a writer, translator, and editor. She has written on Asian American literature, Buddhist American literature, East Asian literature, and visual art, and composition pedagogy. Okay, I'm going to mess it up. Anyways, her essays have appeared in the Merchants of Buddhist American Literature, Religion and the Arts, Teaching Asian North American Texts, and elsewhere. Her poetry translations are anthologized in Oxford Anthology of Modern and Contemporary American Poetry and published in Metamorphoses, Ezra, the Cincinnati Review, Copper Nickel, and many other places. Currently, she's an English professor at Northern Virginia Community College. Over to you, Yuemin.
Thank you, Matilda. Hi, everybody. We're glad to be here. The poem that I'm going to read is the title poem in Li's poetry collection. The first time I saw the collection, I was astonished by the boldness of her ideas and the tone she uses. The speaker speaks in a voice that I often do not speak, cannot speak, and nor quick to translate. However, as a curious person, I still went about doing the translations. And I discovered that just as writing is transformative, translating, I think it's empowering. It's very empowering. And I become more and more fond of the voice in the collection. In this particular poem, the speaker breaks the confinement of traditional expectations of women, such as to stay married, avoid being a single mother, know your place, and settle passively with your fate, etc. She moves away from interdependence, which is a typical trait of the Asians, and speaks instead the language of Western independence and individuality. The poem easily evokes Whitman's line in The Song of Myself, "Do not call the tortoise unworthy, just because it is not something else." And this self-affirmation is also conveyed in the Whitmanesque sensual style through the smooth, sexy, and seductive quality of the symbolic silk that the speaker references. So I'm going to read the poem first in Chinese, part of the poem first in Chinese, and then I'm going to read the English version. 果上零落绸缎，第一根白发长出来了，天边因此也生出一缕新月。是时候该整理一下夜空和情怀，先把月牙移放在柳树梢头再说。爱人或许不在身边，情歌总在；婚姻或许不在身边，孩子总在；战争或许不在身边，危险总在。循着江水，把心事流得又凉又滑又长，今宵无别，真的。果上淋了绸缎，衣窗静谧，真的望月，真的凝思，真的凝固。Wrapped in silk, with the growth of my first white hair, rose on the horizon a sliver of the new moon. Time to sort out the night sky and my mind. Let me first place the tender moon on the willow tip. Love may not be mine, love song is. Marriage may not be mine, the child is. War may not be mine, danger is. Smooth my brain in the fashion of a river, cool, smooth, serpentine. Tonight, just for this, really. Caressing may not be mine, silk is. Unfolding the silk from the bottom of a camphor wood chest, I let it swaddle a naked me. Smooth my brain in the fashion of a river, cool, smooth, and serpentine. Tonight, just for this, really. Wrapped in silk and leaning quietly against the window, I watch the moon chant this song, feeling totally wrapped. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful translation. Truly, translation is an art in and of itself, and that was so beautiful. And the source text is really powerful. I love how it begins with this really wonderful structure that is about negation, and then sort of ends with what is. This is just gorgeous. So before I turn it over to Annie, I just want to say thank you all to our readers. Let's show all of our readers some love in the chat. Let's throw some more love in there, more jazz hands. This has been such a beautiful reading. You all are incredible. And it was so fun to hear all the wonderful work. I think to me, when I thought about Kindling, it was really about how individuals are through vulnerability, through advocacy, through art, through expressing themselves, through coming together to do so, are able to do transformative things. And I think that tonight felt a little bit transformative. I don't know if you can have a little bit of transformative, but that's how it felt. So thank you so much. And over to you, Annie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matilda. We were just I mentioned earlier, we were so thrilled to have Matilda as guest editor for this issue, and the final product couldn't have made us any more happy that we had Matilda, who's came up with the concept for the theme and curated the collection. And I'm so thankful to all of our contributors. We consider you all part of the Yellow Arrow family now, and we'll continue to promote and uplift your voices any way we can. So please share with us your future publication successes, of which I'm sure there will be many. And I hope we'll spend time together again, whether virtually or in person. But I put a link to Kindling on there. I know all of our contributors have a copy, I'm sure, but if anyone else would like to grab one, it's there. And feel free to peruse our website for other opportunities for submissions we have. We would love to see more work from all of our contributors again in the future. This has just been so lovely. As Matilda said, there's nothing quite like hearing the contributors read in their own voices. And actually that was our first translation we've ever published too. I just wanted to make a note of that. So we were so thrilled for that first for us as well.
Thank you. And I think I made the first for the writer poetry. And after my translation, they started publishing translations literature. This is helping solving the 3% problem that characterizes the American literature. That is only 3% of the books we publish each year is translation.
Yeah, so wonderful. We're so happy you submitted. Great. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for our contributors for sharing your words with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Great
everybody.
pieces.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, my name is Violeta Garza, and I have both a poem and a tapestry on the cover of this edition of Yellow Arrow Journal, Kindling, Volume 8, Number 1. And my poem is called A Cringe-Worthy Slice of Wasted Energy Denying My Queerness. Years later, as she faced the cancer firing squad, my mother did not notice me falling for a feminine man. I loved his playfulness riding a bicycle, so I pretended I didn't want children. But stormy skies and blackbirds have a knack for protecting us from ourselves. Does my family know I'm queer? My bike enthusiast ex-husband does. From her realm, my mother knows too. She releases me from blame and places acceptance on a platter. Thank you. That was A Cringe-Worthy Slice of Wasted Energy Denying My Queerness by Violeta Garza.
Hi, good people. My name is Raychelle Heath. I'm calling in from beautiful Playa Ocotal, Costa Rica, and I'll be sharing my poem titled The Answers Don't Matter, and that was published in this beautiful issue, Kindling. This was an interesting theme to approach because it brought up so many different feelings. It made me remember how important my community is, but it also left me with a lot of questions about why things happen the way they do in our country, and I'm referring to the United States. And there's a lot of talk about what people could do to avoid these kinds of incidences that are happening all over the country. And I find those questions so incredibly problematic for so many different reasons, and that was what inspired this poem. So I'll share it with you now. It's called The Answers Don't Matter. If she never got in the car, if she made the journey with a friend, if she had gone during the day, if she hadn't needed a smoke, if she'd been more polite, would it have mattered? If he had worn a polo instead and maybe pulled up his pants, if he'd been a bit shorter or a bit lighter, if he'd carried a Bible in his hands, would it have mattered? If he had been visiting a friend, or better, visiting his mom, if he had gone to the neighbors for sugar or to the corner store for a Coke, if he had sang from mercy, would it have mattered? If she had decided to have a nightcap before bed, or maybe never sleep at all, if he had not had the audacity to find comfort on his own stoop, if she had not still believed that calling 911 for help was an option. If he had just stopped resisting the knee on his neck, would it have mattered? Maybe if the sky hadn't been so blue, or the pavement had not been so very rough and hard. Maybe if the uniform hadn't been so heavy with fear. Maybe then it would have mattered. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me be a part of this today. I'm definitely there with you in spirit and sorry that I can't be there live. I'm going to read a piece I wrote for the latest edition for the Kindling issue, and I felt the subject matter of Raychelle Carson and environmental activism fit well with the Kindling spirit, and I'm glad Yellow Arrow felt the same way. So I'm just really proud to be part of the Yellow Arrow family, and without further ado, this is the Raychelle Carson poem, inspired by my research on her and also visiting her wildlife refuge in Maine. We saunter along her sea breath nests, her refuge of migratory waterfowl, her treasure of a place, warm inhale of pine needles, salt marsh, kestrel hawks, cool exhale of seaweed, tide pools, and rock. Jagged edges along rugged shores, surge breaks, listen to pocket knife whistles of gulls at low tide. Imagine her looking, leaning, observing with sandpaper palms as the sea hums secrets, as songbirds warble, witchery, witchery. She wrote, there may be consequences when we interfere with nature. Toxic masculine atom split, nuclear fallout of chemical industry. What unmarried childless female cares about the future? She raised 3 children. Does it matter? Too emotional, too hysterical to notice the fog trucks and dust squads spraying insecticide confetti with sing-song cheer in parks, on benches, schools, and streets. Good for me, but not for the songbirds or salmon, and maybe not for you or me. She wrote because we just don't know. We don't know what effect they may have years from now in mother's milk, in baby's teeth. The world could not ignore the open wounds left by low tides. Infants born with hands on top of their shoulders, trunks sprouted with little feet. How much longer can we conceal what we do to the air, water, and trees? We do to us? How much longer of profits over people? How long does it take to break down? Miss Carson persisted. For this, pitchforks raised to break like eagles' thin, chemical cracked eggshells. If she could take a big yellow taxi here, she would see not much has changed. Not much has changed. Still foolish manufactured boundaries, politics, poison sprays. What can we do? We would ask her, other than help our children wonder, show them how to pay attention to leaves who curl up their edges like teacups before it rains. Would she say, yes, this exactly? Show them why it is the most important thing when the hummingbird, oriole, bobwhite sing witchery, witchery, each symphonic spring. Thank you.